Hopefully, you won't ever find yourself in a situation where you have to use your survival instincts. However, the reality is that accidents can happen at any time and leave you in a situation where you must act quickly and wisely to save your life. Perhaps it's sailing the sea, diving into a cave, or skiing on an isolated hillside to take advantage of recently fallen snow that will force you to overcome unfathomable challenges. Here are some of the most amazing survival tales we've ever heard, from oceanic spans to the force of ice and to the unimaginable sensation of being completely alone. Number 1. The Wild Boars Thai Soccer Team. In June 2018, the coach and 12 players from a Thai soccer team decided to visit the neighboring Tum Luong Cave, one of Thailand's longest. The lads, who ranged in age from 11 to 16, as well as their coach, a 25-year-old man, dove into the water and started exploring the cave. A flash flood sent them deeper inside, and they eventually arrived at a raised platform 4 kilometers inside the cave system. The lads were trapped for 17 days in the water-filled network of twisting caves due to the flood. They survived on dripping stalactites for their water and lack of food for the first 9 days. They didn't, however, simply wait. The lads took turns drilling a 16-foot hole into the cave wall as they tried to escape after realizing they were stranded. To conserve energy and to keep food from entering their minds, they meditated. After 3 hours had passed since the British divers left the cave's entrance, they came upon the youngsters. The struggle didn't end with survival after that amount of time. Thai Navy SEALs entered into the cave in order to assist the youngsters and hang around with them while rescuers worked out a safe way to extract them from the cave. Each athlete and their coach were recovered by divers over the course of a 3-day effort. Each youngster was connected between 2 divers and had to swim for hours around turns and incredibly tight spaces while donning a full-face diving mask. All managed to survive and soon return to a normal, healthy life following the rescue thanks to the efforts of the Thai Navy SEALs and the global diving community. Sadly, a former Thai Navy SEAL lost his life while helping with the rescue. Number 2. Angela Hernandez. A little animal crossed the road in front of Angela Hernandez SUV in July 2018 while she was traveling down Highway 1 toward Southern California from Big Sur. Hernandez veered to avoid hitting it, but in doing so, she sent her SUV soaring off the road and over a cliff, plummeting roughly 200 feet to a barren, rocky beach. She had a collapsed lung, broken collarbone, ruptured blood vessels in both eyes, cracked ribs, and a bleeding brain, but she survived. Water was rushing over her knees as she finally woke up. Her window was broken with a multi-tool. She climbed out, swam to the shore, and passed out there. She was obviously bruised when she awoke again and lacked shoes, but she still started to make her way to the shore in search of assistance. To collect water that was pouring from moss along the shore, she used a hose from her car. For days, she kept moving. The automobiles passing by on the cliff's edge could be seen from above. However, they couldn't see or hear her screams. It wasn't until a few hikers looking for good fishing areas on the beach stumbled upon her broken Jeep that they searched the beach for Hernandez, who was curled up on some rocks napping. While also making a rescue call, they offered her water. Hernandez's 7-day nightmare was eventually put an end when rescuers used ropes to descend the cliff and transport Hernandez to a hospital. Number 3. Stephen Callahan. Stephen Callahan started his journey back to his native Canada in January 1981 after sailing across the Atlantic in his 6.5-meter sloop. One evening, he wasn't concerned by the storm that was around his boat. However, he was definitely concerned by the hole that a whale or shark had made in the hull of his boat in the middle of the storm. Callahan repeatedly dove back into the sinking boat to snag life protectors as the boat started to sink. Callahan boarded his 6-foot circular raft with enough food and water for a few days scavenging and set sail for the Canaries, 800 miles to the west, where he would eventually arrive. With the aid of a spear gun and a solar still, Callahan produced water for drinking. He tried to flag down a passing ship on day 14, however, it just kept going. He left the shipping routes after a month. By day 50, he was battling dehydration in the warm waters and was covered in salt water sores. He was also having trouble patching a hole in his raft. Callahan, who had lost a third of his body weight and was exhausted, was finally discovered by some fishermen off the coast of Guadeloupe as birds and fish circled his raft and ate the fish guts he had thrown back into the water. He had spent 76 days at sea. Number 4. The Robertson family. The Robertson family drifted at sea for 38 days to experience the University of Life, as his son put it. British dairy farmer patriarch Dougal Robertson only wanted to take his family on a boat excursion. Dougal, his wife, and their 4 kids boarded the Lucette, a wooden schooner, on January 27, 1971, and set off into uncharted waters. The eldest son, Douglas, told the BBC that despite having served in the British Merchant Marine, his father had not made many preparations for the journey. The family survived their 17-month voyage well, traveling to ports all around the world. However, on June 15, 1972, the family came into contact with some killer whales off the Galapagos Islands coast. The whales battered the boat, badly destroying it and splintering it. Water was being absorbed by the ship. Only a lifeboat, a tiny dinghy, and 6 days' worth of food were all they had. Adrift at sea, they subsisted on rainwater and hunted turtles in the hopes of riding Pacific currents to the middle of the ocean, where they would then be propelled toward the Americas. The family of novice crew members retreated to the dinghy after 16 days since the raft had become unusable. They were crammed into a 10-foot boat that was far too small to hold them, yet they managed to hang on until they were found on July 23, 1972, by Japanese fishermen. Number 5. Harrison O'Keefe. On May 28, 2013, divers were working in the Juskin 4S wreckage to try and save the ship, which had capsized and sunk 100 feet below the surface off the coast of Nigeria. Unexpectedly, they discovered a survivor. Cook for the ship was Harrison O'Keefe. When the boat capsized, he was in the bathroom. He attempted to open an emergency hatch, however was unsuccessful. O'Keefe, who was confined inside while the boat started to fill up with water. He eventually became enclosed in a bubble of air that was 4 square feet in size. He had given up on finding relief after 3 days. The knock came after that. It was the diving team's hammer as they pounded away at the ship's surface. After some time, he was given diving equipment and taken to a decompression chamber, where he had to stay for 2 days. In a situation when everyone else on board perished, he had been at depths that should have killed him. He promised to never set sail again, which is hardly surprising. Number 6. Endurance Expedition. Ernest Shackleton had previously braved the South Pole, and in 1914, he was prepared to do so once more. He started out with a company of 28 men. They were hoping to make it all the way across the continent and land at a ship that was waiting on the other side. As a result, their ship, the Endurance, broke apart, leaving them helplessly stuck in the ice. The crew eventually ran out of supplies and resorted to using their lifeboats to float to an island, which took 14 days to reach via the icy Antarctic seas. They then had to mount another expedition to South Georgia Island, which was the closest populated island, at about 1,000 miles from where they had started. All 28 members of the mission made it through the difficult circumstances. However, some of the dogs weren't as fortunate, and were eaten because food supplies were running low. The Ross Sea Party, which was waiting on the other side of Antarctica, did not fare as well. 3 people died on board. Number 7. Giuliani Kopke. By the time her tribulation was over, Giuliani Kopke had 2 significant survival tales to share. When lightning hit Lancer Flight 508 on Christmas Eve 1971, Kopke was a passenger. Kopke was still fastened to her seat when it began to disintegrate in midair, 2 miles above the Peruvian Amazon. She had been battered. She had bumps on her. The bone was fractured in her collarbone. She was alive and the sole survivor of the flight. However, she was alone in the forest at that particular moment. Her only source of food was some sweets. Then she came across a little creek. She navigated it by wading through it, while simultaneously maintaining her fluid levels. 9 days passed before she was able to locate an encampment, despite the fact that the insects in the jungle came close to eating her alive, and that maggots had infected her arm. Quick first aid measures she performed on herself included dousing the infestation of maggots in gasoline. Several hours later, lumber workers discovered her. They treated her injuries, took her to a more inhabited region, and then had her flown to a hospital. She finally got her experience told in the 2000 documentary Wings of Hope by filmmaker Werner Herzog, who had a seat reserved on that particular aircraft before changing it at the last minute. Number 8. Apollo 13. No living human has traveled as far into space as the Apollo 13 crew has to yet. The crew traveled 248,655 miles from Earth before swinging back down for a miraculous landing. Clyde Tombaugh's ashes had long since passed Pluto by now, however that's another story. Despite this, the crew was never able to reach their intended target, which was the moon's surface. Rather, Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes ran into a situation that could have resulted in their deaths. Faulty wiring caused an oxygen tank to catch fire and cause a portion of the spaceship to explode. The crew made the most of the remaining provisions while using the lunar module as a lifeboat. They had to divide the food that would have fed 2 people for a day and a half among 3 individuals to last for 4 days. To slingshot back toward Earth, the crew had to make an orbital adjustment that brought them far from the moon. The lunar module gave the astronauts a place to stay in space that was safe. However, the vehicle was unable to withstand atmospheric re-entry. The crew returned to the damaged command module before making it safely to the ground, all unharmed save for a critically dehydrated Hayes. Number 9. Aaron Ralston. Aaron Ralston will always be remembered for the tragic incident in which he had to amputate his hand in order to free himself after becoming trapped between 2 boulders while rock climbing. In Utah's Blue John Canyon, Ralston was the only climber there. A boulder fell free and caught his hand as he slithered down a canyon. Only a small amount of food and water were available to him, and no one knew he was there. He needed to perform his own rescue. After 3 days of struggling, he finally decided to amputate himself in order to free himself. However, he almost gave up after trying numerous strategies for 2 days. He ended up surviving on his own urine because he was out of water. Then, on day 6, he had to make a tough decision. If he could just break his radius and ulna, he could amputate a chunk of his own arm much more quickly. He was able to successfully amputate his hand after an hour of work using a subpar multi-tool, but he still had to return to his car by stepping down a 65-foot wall with one hand. Then, after his self-amputation, he was found by a European family camping nearby. 6 hours later, police came to his aid. Ralston, who was in danger of dying from blood loss, was discovered in time. When not giving talks or having movies about his life made, he continues to survive by going on outdoor treks and climbing escapades. Number 10. Ada Blackjack. Ada Blackjack was an Iupiat native who was born and raised in Alaska. Vilhjalmur Stephenson and Alan Crawford, 2 Canadians, rented her for a trip to the Wrangel Islands, which are currently regarded as Russian territory. Blackjack served as the team's sempstress and cook with the mission of claiming them in the name of Canada. On September 16, 1921, 5 members of the expedition were left on the island to stake a claim to it. However, their supplies quickly ran out. Blackjack cared for a sick crewmate who later died, leaving her alone on the island, while the other 3 members headed off in search of assistance. Blackjack managed to live there for 2 years, which was no small feat given the danger of being attacked by a polar bear. Nearly 2 years after being abandoned on the island, she learned to hunt seals and partially subsisted on their meat until she was ultimately rescued on August 28, 1923. Blackjack did not receive a hero's welcome, according to a website operated by the University of Alaska Anchorage. She received condemnation for not saving the life of her male crewmate, even though the family eventually rewarded her after meeting with her and releasing a statement that Blackjack had done all that possible to save their son's life. Nevertheless, she lived the rest of her life in poverty before she passed away in 1983. Number 11. The Mexican Fisherman. Living on a prayer. 5 fishermen left their hamlet in Mexico on October 28, 2005, in order to go shark fishing. They intended to be gone for a couple of days, however destiny had other plans. They first lost their tackle, and while looking for the tackle, then their gasoline. Dead in the water might be a better description. They were transported 5,000 miles into the ocean by the winds and current, which also drove them further from the coast. 2 of the men, Juan David, the boat's owner, and El Farcero, finally perished from starvation and had to be buried in the sea. 9 months and 9 days later, a Taiwanese trawler came to their aid near the Marshall Islands. One of the longest survival stories of its kind has been told about their miraculous survival in the heart of the ocean. The 3 remaining guys had to survive by fishing as well as catching seabirds and eating the birds as they are, raw. They were aware that they could starve to death. Due to the lack of available equipment, the survivors were forced to improvise. With the help of engine and cable remnants, they created a new tackle. Salvador Ordóñez, who brought a Bible and knowledge he had learned from a course he had taken on sea survival, was the one who was best prepared. His friends dubbed him the Cat because he was adept at hunting and catching seagulls that unavoidably landed on their board. Salvador Ordóñez, Jess Vida, and Lucio Rendon spent most of their free time fishing and praying. By drinking the rainwater to stay hydrated, they were able to endure the violent storms that hit the area in the fall. They drink fish blood while it wasn't raining. They occupied themselves by singing, dancing, and reading the Bible in order to maintain their mental health and spirits. December and January were the hardest months for them. Huge storms nearly capsized them and prevented them from going fishing. A single raw seabird that they had to divide among the 3 was all they had to eat for 13 days at one point. Number 12. Ricky Meji. January of 2006. In Australia's Northern Territory, Ricky Meji was driving a vehicle. 3 hikers waved at his car while feigning gas exhaustion. However, they were actually robbers. They tainted Ricky's water, and while he was unconscious, they grabbed all of his belongings and fled, leaving him in a shallow grave. There was absolutely no way out for Meji. He had nothing with him, including food, water, shoes, or a phone. He had to consume pee while starving for 5 days. A dam he discovered gave him access to water and food, chiefly leeches, lizards, and amphibians. Meji eventually found a dam with clearer water after struggling through a few more days in the sweltering weather, and he stayed there for about 2 months. Eating insects is not exactly a rich diet, therefore he was losing weight quickly. He lost the ability to drink water, wake up, or even move. He became lifeless. After enduring this agony for 71 days, his luck changed when a station staff investigated the area and found him. He had reduced to the status of a living skeleton by this stage. Nevertheless, he made it out alive and wrote a book about his experience called Left for Dead: How I Survived 71 Days in the Outback, to share his tale. According to Bear Grylls, survival can be summed up in 3 words: never give up. That's the heart of it, really. Just keep trying. You can suggest topics you want to see next in the comment section below. Please subscribe to Weather Collapse if you want to know more, and be updated on the latest news about natural calamities or disasters happening all over the world, and don't forget to like today's video. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.